The South African Federation of Trade Unions, SAFTU, says it is concerned about the increase in the prices of petrol and diesel. The latest increases means that between October and January 2023, the prices of unleaded petrol 93 have increased by 4.12 rand, unleaded petrol 95 by 4.28 rand, whilst diesel 50 ppm and illuminating paraffin have increased by 1.87 rand and 3.67 rand in that order. The Central Energy Fund attributed the increases to a rise in international fuel prices during the period under review and the rand depreciating against the dollar. The Democratic Alliance has also expressed concern about the 8th consecutive increase in the prices of petrol and diesel, saying it will worsen the cost of living and affect the working class negatively.
The increases in fuel prices will have a direct impact on retail and wholesale logistics. Pursuing wider profit margins, these big corporates in wholesale and retail will absorb increased costs through pricing. The consequence will be the rise in the prices of goods they offer in their stores. In aggregate, the direct increase of fuel and the consequential rise in prices of other goods means the working class, both of low and middle income households, are facing hard times in balancing the costs of their household needs and essentials. SAFTU calls on government to subsidize fuel prices to provide immediate relief to the working people. However, a long-term solution should be governments and their multilateral trade institutions holding the space.
Now joining me in the studio, Kevin Mileham, Democratic Alliance Shadow Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. Thank you so much, Kevin Mileham, for joining us. Kevin, can you please confirm you can hear us?
I can hear you. Lovely to be with you.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you join us. Now, Kevin, this kind of increases doesn't exactly get any better. You know, the people are complaining of the spike in petrol prices, and it's the kind of increase that will, of course, have direct impact on motorists, households, and service providers. What else can be done to cushion the effect?
So you're absolutely right. It has an enormous impact on the cost of living, not just on transport and fuel costs of vehicles, but because of the impact of load shedding, a lot of people are using generators, they're using paraffin for heating, lighting, and cooking. And so it has an enormous impact on all aspects of the cost of living. So what needs to be done urgently, we've called for over several years now, the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy to conduct a review of the basic fuel pricing model. We've called for the scrapping of levies and taxes on fuel, which make up about 30% of the fuel price. And we believe that more needs to be done to bring in refined product and store it so that we have a strategic stock of refined products that can cushion the impact of price increases. Obviously, there are other effects, factors that are affecting the price of fuel as well. For example, South Africa's stance on the Ukraine-Russian conflict. And that is impacting on our rand-dollar exchange rate and obviously then impacting on the price of fuel. So we would look at foreign policy as well as being an area that needs to be addressed. And South Africa needs to get itself in line with the rest of the world.
All right. Is there any way that the government can intervene, maybe with some kind of measures like relaxing taxes to release these burden on its citizens? Is there anything that can be done?
So as I said, the taxes that are included in the fuel price make up about 30% of the actual price that you pay at the pump. And some of those taxes include the general fuel levy and the road accident fund levy. Now, it's absolutely bizarre that people who are using fuel for generators and large-scale utility electricity generation like Eskom, who buy enormous amounts of diesel, should have to pay the road accident fund levy as well. So we think that the road accident fund levy should be scrapped and that we should move to an alternative form of ensuring that third parties are insured against road accidents. And we also need to look at how our fuel price is calculated. This is something that the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy undertook to do over a year ago, and they've done absolutely nothing about it.
Okay, let's also talk about the energy sector. It seems that there is no end to the blackouts that the country is experiencing. Where is the country now in terms of the energy sector? And is there any kind of alleviation that can be done for the consumers on this?
Sure. So South Africa's had its worst year of load shedding in history. We've had more load shedding so far this year than the previous 8 years combined. It is a national crisis. There is some light at the end of the tunnel in that the one new power plant, Kusile, which has been offline for the better part of a year, possibly even longer, is now coming back into service. The first unit was brought back online in September, and we're cautiously optimistic that more units will be online before the end of the year. However, a lot more needs to be done to address South Africa's electricity crisis. We need to diversify. We cannot be reliant on one source of supply, namely Eskom. And we need to open up our markets. We need to decentralize generation. We need to make it easier for individuals, businesses, and farmers and agriculture and the like to invest in electricity. We need to make it cheaper for them to do so. We need to allow imports to flow freely. We can't limit the amount that's imported. We need to reduce the regulation and really make it easy for people to generate electricity in South Africa.
Now, a lot of times, countries who are suffering a depreciating currency like South Africa, Nigeria, they tend to talk about a unification of the currency because, of course, it's not feasible, it's not realistic for us to continue at this level. Is there anything in the works in terms of unifying currency in South Africa?
In terms of unifying with the rest of Africa, is that where you're going with that?
No, like against the dollar now.
So South Africa's currency is it's market related against the dollar. This is a little bit out of my area of expertise, but as with every currency in the world, it's obviously benchmarked against the dollar. It's benchmarked against every other currency. You can peg it there, but we're currently at a low point in terms of our rand dollar exchange rate. And it might be worthwhile seeing what we can do to increase investment in South Africa, to improve that exchange rate, and to really see what we can do to make our economy much more viable. We should be looking at attracting investment. It's a relatively cheap country for Western countries to invest in, even China and Russia and India and places like that. South Africa is a relatively cheap investment, but our regulatory environment doesn't make that attractive. And so we need to look at all those factors and say, what can we do to grow our economy? What can we do to get rid of unemployment? What can we do to make South Africa a viable competitor on the global market? And that will do a lot to improving our currency exchange rate.
And how would you say that South Africans are reacting to this spike in prices?
Look, South Africans are absolutely outraged at the spike in fuel prices, at the spike in the cost of living. It's becoming more and more unaffordable for South Africans to get by on what they earn each month. And part of the problem is that they are now dipping deeper and deeper into credit. So we're seeing that the cost of living is spiking, inflation is increasing, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for the South African Reserve Bank to control consumer price inflation. And so South Africans are really, really unhappy at the state of affairs and at the government's management of this energy crisis on the broader scale.
Now, it's quite scary because a lot of reports have said regarding this issue that the lower the rand goes, the higher the prices will go, and they do not see it ending anytime soon. What do you think South Africa's future is going to be if it continues to depreciate?
South Africa needs to, as I said earlier, address its economy. It needs to rebuild its economy. It needs to make this an attractive economy. It needs to ensure employment. It needs to make our people work again. It needs to create an environment where work is available and there are opportunities for South Africans. That will do a lot to improving the situation. Secondly, it will create more taxes for the government, and government will then have more funds available to address the infrastructure backlog that it so desperately needs to manage. So there's a lot that government can do. But I think the first step in doing that is going to be a change in government. And we're looking forward to the 2024 elections to bring about that change.
All right, Kevin Mileham, Democratic Alliance Shadow Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at this hour.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now.